Hey, so thanks for joining the Climate Resilience and Stewardship Subgroup for the Oregon Community Food Systems Network. Today, I think we're going to get through, we're trying to get through four things, three really kind of brief updates, and then we're going to dive into going over the project prioritization survey that y'all and many folks, 16 folks completed from the subgroup. I sent that out in an email, and if you haven't seen it, I'm going to send you the link right now, and you can review that as we're doing some other updates. There's that document. But first, just a quick OCFSN update. Things have been going really well. Things are moving along with OCFSN as a network. We recently had a mini convening for kind of more organizational support, talking about fundraising and strategic planning for the network and for member organizations. We recently, the big news is that OCFSN, I think it's been a month now or so, got its 501(c) status completed. So we are now a formal nonprofit, which is very exciting. So those are a couple things. Also, we recently had our first regional in-person gathering in Central Oregon. Several of you on this call were there. Thanks for coming out to that. And that was really, really fun. We got to connect with folks in Bend and Sisters. We toured Agricultural Connections, Food Hub in Bend, and then took a little break and then hung out at the Roundhouse Foundation in Pine Meadow Ranch in Sisters, had a conversation regarding ag and water and climate issues out there. It was a hot day. It was in the mid to upper 90s, pretty windy, but we ended up, despite the conditions, had a really good conversation, and we can get into that a little bit as we're talking about different projects that the subgroup can engage in. But yeah, and then we went and had some delicious food and connections at the barn and had some pizza and hung out after that. So it was really fun, really good connecting with folks out there, and we'll be doing that regional type gatherings across the state as we move into the rest of the year. We're planning one for earlier in 2023 in Southern Oregon. There's going to be one on August 24th in Portland. That's more of just like a happy hour get together that y'all have probably maybe seen some emails on that. We're going to be sending more details shortly, but that's August 24th in the evening. And yeah, so those are some quick updates. As far as the water and ag conversation at Pine Meadow Ranch, we had folks from USDA, NRCS. We had folks from Deschutes River Conservancy. Megan was there, Lauren Gwynn from the policy working group of OCFSN, and Natalie at FOF gave a really good overview of kind of the issue that's there, and we'll be sending out notes on that meeting, and I'll forward that to this subgroup. But we got a really good overview of, Western water law, some of the foundational issues surrounding the water tightness there in Central Oregon, and then also got to talk with folks who are deep in it, like Lisa over at Deschutes River Conservancy, about some of the priorities or potential solutions. Natalie did a great overview. Yeah, Megan, if you have anything to add on your experience there at the gathering, totally open for that. And yeah. In Central Oregon.
Yeah, the water rights and irrigation system is broken, and there are some policy fixes that are not clear and they are needed, but there's not a clear policy path. And so we had a pretty good discussion about how broken the system is, and how it's not working, and some current challenges that people are facing, and some current, basically some policy decisions that have been made recently that are putting farmers in an even worse situation right now. And so it's something that I think we should be talking about as a committee, but it's not everybody's realm, and it maybe isn't anybody's realm right now, really, in the OCFSN, in terms of anybody having this sole focus on water policy. And so I think there's place for some real good thinking about what is our role, if there's any, what's OCFSN's role, and I look forward to thinking that through together with folks not here today.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Just a little report back. And, and who do we need to follow? Who's more deeply, what organizations are deeply, in this work? There's a lot of folks working on water issues. Jeffrey, you were there. If you want to chime in any update. If not, we can jump to an update on the 2022 disaster relief grant.
Yeah, I mean, I was only there for the second half of it, and I agree with everything that Megan just said. I think another nice aspect, just a plug for these gatherings, is being there in person and being able to connect, and just having the space, especially like the kind of unstructured social space afterwards. Encourage all of you, if there is an OCFSN mini gathering around you, to go, because yeah, just forgot what that was like. Didn't expect to be so inspired, and it's just like way more like getting to oh, I think my internet connection. Okay, anyways, it was great. Encourage you all to enjoy. Thanks for facilitating.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for being there. Cool. Yeah, update on the disaster relief grant. Throw it to either Megan or Brittany, if whoever wants to. I know, Megan, you're on the review committee.
I'm not actually.
Oh, you're not? Oh, okay.
I can chime in on that for sure. Yeah, so round 3 is complete. I just sent off the list to the bookkeeper to be able to go to the next steps of writing checks. We had total requested for round 3 of $446,166, and we were able to give out $210,425 this last round. So we've completed all 3 rounds. Last round we had 25 total applications. 24 were in English, 1 was in Spanish. We had 8 BIPOC applicants this last round. Unfortunately, we had a lot more requested than we were able to give. So we were able to score on some rubrics and make some tough decisions. We had a pretty heavy lean on Willamette Valley applicants this last round. Same reasons for requesting grants. Water's turned off, all the starts, veg loss due to heat, sunburned fruit, lack of hay crop, selling of underweight cattle, equipment loss and fire, chicken loss. So just kind of the same old stuff we've been seeing. So yeah, we should be wrapping everything up. We'll have kind of a review of the total process for everybody coming up soon. And farmers were very, very excited and relieved to get some money. So happy to be a part of that process. It was very satisfying.
I want to chime in because I was on the review, but I was very excited that after the first initial round, because only one of the farmers so the Pathways to Farming farmers, there's 9 of them, and only 1 applied initially, and it took them to tell the rest of the farmers that it's a fairly easy application, and so they needed to hear the trust from someone in their kind of circle to let them know that it's a really easy way to get money. So I was very excited when I saw all the names of the farmers in the program over the 3 courses, that they actually physically asked for money, and I was like, thank you for trusting the process and getting money that you deserve. So, and thank you, Brittany, for all the time you put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Referrals were a big, I talked to many of the farmers that applied, and a lot of the BIPOC farmers had mentioned a specific name that they were referred to. So that was a big part of the process for them. And I'm glad we had all 3 rounds to be able to build that trust.
I can chime in too. One piece that's important for people to know, and maybe a little unsettling, is that we don't have any funding for this year. So depending on how this year unfolds, we do not have any funding from the state for this OCFSN disaster relief fund. We have spent it all. And so it's possible that we'll be convening some folks to think about if there is a need and or anticipating a need, any private funding options to help us fill a gap. And then no real clarity either about kind of what's next in terms of ongoing funding from the state.
Is there any update from the ODAP that is relevant to that conversation, or?
I don't have an update about ODAP. I'm not following it closely.
Honestly, like we've had a lot of the people, a couple of the people in three or four people in the last round got denied. It was the small farmers really don't fit into that program. So
yeah, I want to just second that anybody also who's growing, whose business has been, who is a beginning farmer whose business has been growing over the last several years is not a good fit for that program, which is really unfortunate. And it has to do with the way that if you, obviously you're showing losses from one year to the next, and if your income 3 or 4 years ago was relatively low because you were just getting started, but there was growth happening, the way that they're kind of determining the baseline is really problematic for our beginning farmers and ranchers. And those are all pieces that I should say that we have provided to the governor's office. I have provided and gotten feedback from the community and provided some of those barriers and challenges to the governor's office a couple of months ago, and we'll probably want to do that again this fall.
Great. Thanks for that update. I think we can just got about 40 minutes. I want to spend the most of our time today talking about this project prioritization survey. Thanks everyone who submitted comments and did that survey. We had about 16 responses from folks involved in the subgroup. Yeah, so we can just I'll give a brief kind of like overview of what we were asking, and then discuss the results. I could share my screen if that's helpful. So we're all looking at the same thing. Okay. There. Can folks see that?
You can make it a little bigger. That would be helpful.
Sure. Like zoom in. How's that? Better? Okay. Can maybe do that. I don't know if that helps. Okay. So this is the report that I put together from the Qualtrics survey that we sent you all. This was an effort to both get comments and suggestions on the draft purpose and draft objectives for the subgroup that Megan and I put together, looking at past notes from meetings of this subgroup and the Farming for the Future working group. So we'll just kind of go through here question by question. First, we got this right here is the initial purpose that we kind of threw out there to you all. I'm not going to read it. And everyone agreed with this purpose. We had no votes, but we did have some good edits that I've incorporated at the bottom here in a renewed or a new kind of take on the purpose. I'm not going to read through all the comments unless we want to, but I don't think we need to. Folks can review those on their time. Then we got everyone agreed with the objectives, the 3 objectives: to provide a collaborative space to share issues, updates, and opportunities to advance climate resilience and stewardship on Oregon's farms and ranches, and share these discussions across Farming for the Future working group and broader OCFSN. So the first one. Number 2, align subgroup members to identify and work on collaborative projects and assist farmers impacted by climate change and increase available resources to expand agricultural-based climate solutions. And the 3rd, advocate for and expand state and federal policy to provide disaster relief and advance climate resilience and stewardship on Oregon's farms and ranches, and align working group members to build collective power to address these issues. So got 2 good edits on that also were incorporated and discussed in the new proposed objectives, but those stayed pretty much the same. So with just jump straight to the ranking. Basically, we had 13 projects that were gathered from notes from previous meetings, conversations in the first subgroup meeting that we had in April, and those were all refined a little bit, edited slightly, and then put into this survey, and you all got to choose your top priority and your lowest priority. Kind of as an overview, and some folks mentioned this in the comments, there was a lot of diversity of opinion in a lot of these. So many of these potential projects were someone's first priority and someone's last priority. But there still was a little bit of information as just showing some shared kind of first or higher priorities versus mid or low. So I organized this table by kind of 2 ways. The mean, so here mean meaning the average, the lower the number, the higher priority as an average across the 16 respondents.
Andrew, will you say that again? The lower the number, the higher the priority. Why is, because it was like a 1. It was a 1 would be high priority.
Number 1 was your first priority. Number 2 would be your second. So the more folks who had their who put these projects as their first priority, it would be averaged down into a lower number.
Great.
But that being said, because there was such what is called standard deviation, or such a high variability between the different respondents, I thought that just using the average doesn't really get to some of the more nuance of what folks are thinking as our priorities. So I did this other review, and I don't know how statistically valid this is, but I just looked at each one of the projects and did a percentage of number of folks who put this in their top 1 through 5, the top 5 or third highest priority. And that pretty much was the same. It related very closely with the mean, except for project number 1, which is right here. 31% or so of y'all put that into your top 5 priority, but many of you put it right in the middle, and not many of you put it in the lowest priority. So when looking at it by just mean, it was very high, but looking at it as like a high priority of how number of percentage of folks were like, this is 1 through 5, very high priority for us to work on, it actually was a little bit lower, and one of the lowest. So that is advocate for renewed funding for natural disaster relief for small scale and marginalized farmers, something that we're very actively doing at OCFSN. So that was, just a little interesting. So like a lot of folks put that as a middle priority, maybe because we're already doing that. I don't know. That's just the one real like kind of outlier interesting information that we got from this analysis. Otherwise, there's pretty straightforward as far as some of the higher priorities is to be expected. For the number 4, identify and collaborate on new or existing projects that provide resources to producers to adapt to a new farming landscape under a changing climate. This is something that is kind of like the foundational like reason we're all meeting as a subgroup. So that's pretty clear. It's like, yes, this is a high priority. We need to be following and identifying these projects or creating new ones. Number 11, advocate for food systems be included in disaster planning. That's a little bit more interesting. I think we can have a conversation about that today, at least as far as why that was such a high priority, who has capacity to engage in that type of work, or where the inroads are. Number 3, another high priority, providing a forum for information sharing, including climate resilient agricultural practices. That's what this is as well. It's where we have a forum where we're sharing information about these different opportunities and how it relates to climate and ag. Number 6, this is something that was discussed in Bend, brought up here in the April meeting, water and ag drought issues and how it connects to climate is a relatively high priority, but less than 50% of you put that in their top 5. So once again, as someone stated in the comments, there's a large variability of what we think are of our priorities in this work. Share upcoming funding opportunities, another foundational goal and purpose of this subgroup. I'm not going to read through all of these. Y'all can look at it. I'm going to talk about some of the lowest priorities. So we do know that number 13 and number 8, project number 13 and project number 8 are very low priorities for the group and stood out. Hosting climate disaster preparedness and agricultural training or convening, and then supporting youth education programs to highlight the connections between climate and ag. I think both of those are kind of outside of the project realms, or the capacities or the skill sets of folks who are engaging in this work in this subgroup, is why those were put down as lower. Feel free to interrupt me if you have questions or thoughts on this. I'm not going to read. We had some really good comments. How does this relate to the policy committee? Where, how are those lines drawn? How do we communicate with the policy committee? The bolded ones were other project ideas that folks submitted. Training centers, focus on agricultural practices, and advocating for the passage of a bill that will implement the recommendations of the Oregon Global Warming Commission's Natural and Working Lands proposal. Finally, the last question, how often should the subgroup meet? It was almost right down the line between monthly and quarterly. So I think we're going to go with every other month meeting, if that sounds good to folks, and we can schedule that. So just some discussion of the results, edited down the purpose and included, which was a very important comment, some honoring and recognition of the roots of resilient land management practices that come from Indigenous and Black practices and traditions. So making sure that we're really clear about that in our purpose of a subgroup. I chose not to include that again in the objectives because it's hard to kind of like pick which one to put that. So I think it was a good place for that in the purpose. Yeah. Any thoughts? We can dive into some of these specific projects or any initial kind of comments that folks have about this this process or the survey. Thank you so much for filling it out. Is this about? Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for prepping this.
Yeah.
Thanks for prepping this detailed report, and thanks for the clear summary.
Cool. Yeah, hopefully it was clear. Good.
A lot of information to break down. I appreciate your thoughtfulness and yeah, putting together a lot of disparate information. It's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, maybe we can talk about how, so I kind of just picked kind of arbitrary cutoff points of like, okay, these seem to be the top priorities of the group. These were kind of like the middle and the lower. And I spoke about this outlier number 1 that is really like key to what we're doing. Yeah.
Andrew, as we're looking at this section, as we dive in and kind of start talking about each of them, none of us are going to be able to know what 4, 11, 3, 6, and 5 are, for example. So
Yeah.
if there's a way that you can just summarize for us, you know, as you're referring to them, that would be really helpful. Or you can tell us we need to like have, I can't look at 2 documents
Yeah.
at the same time very easily. So
We'll just look at
help facilitate clarity
yeah,
for that,
I think
will
we
help.
can just look at the table that has the description, and they're organized by the same priority ranking here. So
Okay.
yeah, so we can just start at the top. And I think I mentioned this in looking at this. Number 4, identify and collaborate on new or existing projects that provide resources to producers to adapt to a new farming landscape under changing climate. Pretty vague. It's more of like, this is a priority that we want to do, but it's not a project in itself, right? It's like that we want to identify new and work together on projects. Any comments here? I think it's, yeah.
I guess I just want to throw in for folks, I don't know if this is the right time, but just let folks know that ORCAN is organizing another training for agricultural professionals. So that's all of you all on this call. It's Oregon USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service. It's OSU Extension, Soil and Water Conservation Districts, Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, and that's happening in October. Every Wednesday morning from 9:30 to 11:30. And the idea is to start to develop some of these tools. Will be part of that training as well, in terms of like providing case studies. You know, what we've heard a lot from producers as well as technical service providers is people just need to see some examples of what this looks like on the ground. And that's kind of also how I read this first project a little bit, or one possible iteration of that project idea. And so we'll be doing things like that there, and then just happy to talk through what other things we're hearing, both from a ton of surveys that our partners have done of their technical service providers to figure out what tools they need, as well as farmers to figure out what tools they need to better adapt to a new farming landscape.
Ashley, would you be willing to share the save the date, which has a little description, kind of just a teaser to these folks, or to Andrew to share?
Yeah, and I've also got our website updated, so I'll throw that in the chat right now.
Great.
Maybe Andrew, if you could capture that in the notes, or I can.
Yeah.
Great.
Great. Okay. Number 11, advocate for food systems to be included in disaster planning. You know, that was captured in the notes from I think it was the October full network meeting and a breakout for this subgroup. Could be, I might be remembering that incorrectly, but yeah, if this is something that Megan and I both when we were reviewing this survey and talking about it, it was something that kind of like, who is working on this? Where's the capacity here? And it's interesting that this was brought up to like a really high priority. Maybe we can talk a little bit of why that is, and maybe where folks are interested or have capacity. And, you know, maybe the folks who highly prioritize this aren't in the room today, but maybe we can talk a little bit about it. I
had one comment and reflection on it, which was that disaster, we're seeing your train, there we go. The disaster planning can be, I'm involved on a personal level with disaster planning, but it can include earthquakes, and most disasters are natural disasters, but earthquakes are a really significant part of natural disaster planning, and that doesn't seem to me like a good fit for this committee's work. It's not at the intersection of climate resilience and stewardship, and so I just wanted to maybe if we were to advance this, it would be important to add natural disaster planning or climate related natural disaster planning or something. I often like to, when we say natural disasters, I often like to add the word climate related or climate caused, to just acknowledge the connection between climate and natural disasters that don't always happen naturally.
Yeah, Sienna here from Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council. I think this is an area that my organization department has worked in recently, developing some natural hazard mitigation plans for some of the counties that we serve. And I think there's a really clear, or there's some very good opportunities for food systems, groups, and organizations in regions and counties that have natural hazard mitigation plans to get involved or reach out with the organizations that are responsible for maintaining those plans, whether it's, well, I think natural hazard mitigation plans, at least as a formal document, is probably the clearest alignment. Community wildfire protection plans, I think, are maybe a little bit too specific, and I haven't seen, at least in the current iterations, a good way, or what am I trying to say? I haven't seen a lot of like other systems being integrated into those plans, but maybe that's just a conversation that needs to happen. And there's, I think one of the limitations we saw when we were doing the NHM natural hazard mitigation plan updates was it was during a pandemic. So it was really hard to get engagement across all the different systems we might've wanted to see involved, but usually county offices of emergency management are the ones responsible for natural hazard mitigation plans. And then there's opportunity within each city within a county gets their own kind of mini version of a plan as well. And there's space in, if not in the full county plan, then in those smaller mini plans. I think there would be a really good opportunity to talk about food systems resilience in the event, as Megan said. I think it's good to specify a climate related disaster like the drought, fire. Yeah, that's all I want to add. I saw that recently, so.
Something that's coming up for me, maybe this is not totally related, but at the recent Central Oregon OCFSN gathering, I was catching up with Amanda Smith, who's one of the program technicians at the FSA. And she was telling me about the non-insured crop disaster assistance program. Are you all familiar with that, the NAP? Saying that basically, I mean, it covers a wide range of crops, pretty much most like diversified market garden crops that small farmers would be growing, and provides financial assistance to producers of these non-insurable crops when low yields or like loss of inventory or loss of product occur due to natural disasters, including drought or freeze, or basically everything that we've been experiencing really all across the state. And she was just saying that it's like an incredibly well-funded program that gets very little attention. Yeah, not sure where that fits in, but I had never heard of it, which I was ashamed to learn, because so many farmers that I work with would have certainly and could certainly benefit from this program, at least how it's described.
Jeffrey, would you repeat what the name of that program was? I missed it.
Yeah, totally. It's the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, or NAP, which is administered by USDA's FSA, Farm Service Agency.
I mean, maybe something we could do is have, convene some kind of a meeting where, like, maybe these are two separate things, but have that person from FSA kind of present on what that opportunity is. I've heard folks having some challenges accessing FSA funds, but those could have been other types of funds. And then I kind of have questions about, like, do you have to own the land to be able to access that insurance provision or that disaster relief provision? So maybe that's something that we could do that's tangible, is like have them present at least to us, if not making that more broadly available to producers in our various networks. And then, also, Sienna, it sounds like you've got a great model that you've started with your organization, and maybe sharing what that looks like in terms of how you put those pieces together. And then finally, just recognizing that Sarah also has a role with Oregon Food Bank, and I'm sure that this is something that they're also thinking about and could be nice, like complement maybe to Sienna's work.
Great. Yeah, so thinking about, we got a lot of projects here, and thinking about next steps for each of these. For the food systems, I appreciate you, Ashley, thinking about that, or the food systems, including it in natural disaster planning, like having a presentation from FSA, maybe a future meeting regarding this from folks who are actually engaged in it, like Sienna, you all quite maybe a little bit more detail. But we have only about 14 minutes left, and want to get through all these. So maybe we can just jump through the rest of these and just kind of think about next steps for each of them. Maybe spend a minute or so on each. And there's some we're just gonna cut from the list, so we're not gonna have to get through all these.
I have another process suggestion, and that might
Sure.
be that not today, maybe today, but maybe just in a informal survey. The next step could be identify who's interested in working on these, because for some of us, we wouldn't need to be at a meeting where we're spending a half an hour to an hour diving in deep in an area that's not in alignment with our organization's priorities. So maybe that could be another step too, is today just kind of going through each one and identifying next steps, and then reflecting and identifying next steps. And then next, we could also later identify who wants to work on each to see where there's energy.
That sounds great.
Okay.
So number 3, provide a forum for information sharing, including, and this is something that ORCAN is doing, right? Maybe I'm having a hard time taking notes and leading this. If you wouldn't mind.
Do you want me to share my screen so you can?
I'm taking notes here. No,
okay,
no,
you've got that dialed. Okay, sure, yeah.
Just leading the meeting a little bit.
Sure, I can walk through these. So this is connected to ORCAN's work, aligned with ORCAN's work, but it's not something we're doing in a formal way in all of these areas. And this seems like a really good fit for this, a good place. This OCFSN Climate Subcommittee seems like a good place for us to do that, and it seems like there was alignment. So unless there are concerns about making space and time for that going forward, Andrew and I will think about how we can make space for that in our meetings, either on a regular basis or special meetings where there's a specific topic and folks can join if they're interested. I do want to note that there are so many different ideas here, and we want to make sure that people can engage in the ways that they're interested and their time is being used well. So if that sounds okay, we can move forward with that.
Great.
That through. And then number 6, policy and project solutions to challenges of drought and water scarcity. That's really related to the conversation that some of us had at the regional convening in Central Oregon. Looks like there's interest in that, and it would be great to have convened folks who are interested in working on that, on water issues specifically. Any concerns about moving forward with that work somehow? Or thoughts about it? This is a time also to just briefly identify resources or anything that, any reflections? Okay. And then number 5, sharing upcoming funding opportunities, identifying potential funding sources. So this is a great, we have a listserv for, I think, Andrew, do we have a climate sub listserv, or do we have just a list that you manage? A list of contacts that you manage?
It's a list of contacts that I manage currently, and it's like, I think 30 people. We could turn it into a listserv easily,
Okay.
if we want to do that. Yeah.
I don't think actually that's super relevant to this now that I think about it. When I hope that we can think of each other as a community that we keep in mind when there are funding opportunities or funding we're seeing, funding sources that we want to, that if we're working on a project or submitting a grant application, for example, that we keep each other in mind and to use that list of partners who are part of this committee as resource people. And then also we could consider saying, hey, Andrew, will you share this out with the whole group? I think this could be a good fit for others at OCFSN, and it could be that our subgroup is a good audience for that. So I'm happy to also help vet things, but hope you'll keep each other in mind. This doesn't have to be, I don't think this has to be topic of a meeting that we would all be part of unless there was something really big and we wanted folks to provide input on it, and collaborate, as a whole group. I think this is kind of a more picking and choosing who is a fit, since we all do such different work. Any thoughts about that? Funding connections?
Yeah, I think I was just going to add that I think kind of in alignment with the previous item, the coordinating on policy and project solutions, that could also, I feel like that's the number 5 is kind of just generally about sharing opportunities for supporting each other's efforts. So policy ideas or projects moving forward could also kind of be in that list of things that are shared out with the group.
Okay, I think that's Andrew, if you don't mind scrolling up to number 1, the first one.
Oh, sorry.
This is specifically related to grants, I think, and funders. Number 4 at the top is more just definitely sharing out and collaborating on projects.
Great, cool.
Connecting on projects. Any other thoughts about this funding connection? The next one is supporting regional farmer-to-farmer hubs, cohorts. And this is something that we want you to know that ORCAN is really thinking about right now, and thinking about how we can both farmer-to-farmer hubs, but also service provider support by region. And so this could be something that ORCAN could possibly kind of facilitate some meetings around and get some input on, and see if there are opportunities for collaboration here. But this is going to probably be advancing, and y'all are great partners. I agree, Sarah. I don't think we need a meeting about funding. Any thoughts about, any reflections on the farmer-to-farmer hubs, cohorts?
Or other groups maybe that are doing this specifically when it comes to climate?
This would be great. This would be a really good one to do it, to kind of survey and see who is either. I think the 2 questions might be who's working on this already, who's committed to working on it and either has capacity or is securing funding to work on it, and or who has interest in engaging and working on these issues, each of these these projects. So it'd be good to know who's interested in working on hubs. Nice. I see Anna, you're in Central, so your role might be more in Central Oregon. Ashley?
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, I think there's some elements of farmer-to-farmer education that are happening right at Rogue Farm Corps, and then through the Oregon Pasture Network. So just want to recognize that those are kind of some variations on on farmer to farmer education in terms of understanding who's already committed. Like those are some examples of folks that I know of, and there could be others. You know, Sarah's on this call and we're part of Northeast Oregon Women in the Land project that's bringing together women ranchers specifically in Northeastern Oregon to share some of their work on climate resilience as well.
I have to leave. I have a meeting with Senator Wyden's office in 5 minutes, so I'm going to hop off. And Andrew, if you can wrap us up, that would be great. Muted.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Have a good meeting. Bye. Okay. So number 7, utilizing OCFSN's ArcGIS story mapping tool to identify how organizations are collaborating, where gaps are, and where producers are most impacted by climate change. Lower priority that we show here. And I think this is framed, maybe could be reframed. There is a tool that intern has helped OCFSN put together that is more of a relationship map of how these different organizations are working together. And maybe we can identify, instead of a story map is, that's a time consuming and it can be very focused in on a specific topic. We can do a relationship map that is more focused on climate and ag intersections and who's working on what and how they work together. Might be like a more achievable way of reframing this project. Just an idea, throwing that out there. These are lower priorities as far as the whole group. So conduct a regional assessment of climate impacts and opportunities for resilience. I think Megan mentioned that there's actually something that was done. Maybe Ashley, you can speak to this on I forget the representative's name, but there's some work that's already happened on this that we can maybe be sharing out, and we don't have to create something new.
Yeah, it's Representative Marsh down in Southwestern Oregon. There's that, and then the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute, if I've got that all. Yeah, I see Sienna nodding, and recognition. They've done some county level assessments of climate impacts. It's not every single county, and there's more counties that are coming out, but I can also grab that link and share that with everybody too, if folks don't have it at the ready.
That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Good. This number 1 outlier, I think this is still a priority, and is OCFSN is, there's a proven track record advocating for renewed funding for natural disaster relief for small scale and marginalized farmers. There's momentum there, and it's an obvious need. So I think just because it was put in our 16 respondents, kind of like mid priority. Yep. And then these last 3, report out on members orgs producer listening sessions and act on information and priorities provided. I think that's just a potential for our meetings. We have maybe Foff, Brittany, like presenting on your member surveys that you have done and that kind of thing, and just a piece of a meeting to hear where priorities are getting shared by producers. And then number 13 and number 8, I think we'll just maybe we'll cut those from the list to make it manageable somewhat. Cool. Final thing, bi-monthly meetings, I'll send out a scheduling, but it would be good to schedule a recurring meeting if that works for folks, and I'll put that in an email and see if we can get a time that works as a regular recurring meeting to help just streamline the scheduling process, and folks can plan more than a couple months out at a time for getting it on their calendars. If that sounds good. Good, cool. Any last comments? And if not, yeah. have a great rest of your day, and stay cool. Have some fun. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Andrew. Great
Yeah.
to see everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Hmm.